The knock came at exactly 10:17 in the morning, and it was the kind of knock that instantly made my stomach tighten. Not loud. Not desperate. Just 3 slow taps that somehow felt heavier than any pounding fist. When I opened the door, I froze. Standing in the hallway was my wife's best friend, Marissa. Her dark hair was loosely tied up, her eyes looked exhausted, and she was wearing a white hotel robe that clearly wasn't hers. Tiny drops of water still clung to her skin as if she had rushed out after a shower. Behind her, sunlight poured through the hotel corridor windows, making the entire scene feel unreal. But it wasn't the robe that shocked me. It was the look on her face. She looked like someone carrying a secret too heavy to hold anymore. And before I could even ask what happened, she looked straight at me and asked one question that changed everything. Before we continue, if you believe kindness deserves a second chance and that one honest act can change a life forever, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Ancient Truth for more emotional stories that stay with you long after they end. My name is Rowan Mercer, and until that morning, I thought I understood the people closest to me. I was 38 years old, married to a woman named Vivian, and living what most people would call a stable life. Nothing spectacular. Nothing dramatic. Just comfortable. Vivian and I had been married for 11 years. We had survived job losses, family problems, financial struggles, and countless ordinary challenges together. At least that's what I believed. Marissa had been part of our lives almost the entire time. She and Vivian met in college and became inseparable. Birthdays. Holidays. Vacations. Family gatherings. Marissa was always there. She was the friend everyone trusted. The one who remembered important dates. The one who helped people move apartments. The one who stayed late when someone needed support. If someone had told me she would become the center of the biggest turning point in my marriage, I would have laughed. Yet there she was. Standing at my door. Wearing a hotel robe. Looking like she hadn't slept all night. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then she finally asked her question. She asked if I was truly happy. Not whether my marriage was working. Not whether I loved Vivian. Not whether everything was okay. Just one simple question. Was I happy? The strange thing was that I couldn't answer immediately. Because somewhere deep inside, a part of me realized nobody had asked me that in years. I invited her inside. The moment she stepped into the living room, I noticed how nervous she seemed. She wasn't acting like someone involved in a scandal. She wasn't acting guilty. She looked heartbroken. The robe made more sense when she explained that she had spent the night at a nearby hotel after leaving a family event unexpectedly. Still, something was clearly wrong. The morning sunlight filled the room while she sat on the edge of the sofa, staring at the floor. Then she told me something that made my chest tighten. For months she had been trying to decide whether to tell me the truth. For months she had stayed silent because she believed exposing it would destroy multiple lives. For months she had convinced herself that it wasn't her place. But after what happened the previous night, she couldn't carry it anymore. I remember feeling my heartbeat getting louder. The kind of feeling people get before a storm arrives. Marissa explained that she had recently discovered something involving Vivian. At first she thought it was a misunderstanding. Then she thought it was temporary. Then she thought it would stop. Instead, it kept growing. I sat there listening as pieces of a puzzle I never knew existed slowly came together. There was another man. Not a dramatic secret affair like the movies. Something quieter. Something more dangerous. An emotional relationship that had been growing for nearly a year. Private messages. Long conversations. Hidden meetings presented as work obligations. Nothing physical as far as Marissa knew. But something that crossed every boundary a marriage depends on. The worst part wasn't hearing it. The worst part was realizing how many signs I had ignored. The late-night texting. The growing distance. The way conversations between Vivian and me had become shorter over the years. The way she seemed emotionally absent even while sitting beside me. I wanted to reject everything. I wanted to tell Marissa she was mistaken. But deep down, pieces were already fitting together. Marissa wasn't there to attack Vivian. She wasn't there to destroy my marriage. In fact, tears filled her eyes as she spoke. Because she loved her friend. And she hated what the truth would do. But she also believed I deserved honesty. That morning became one of the longest mornings of my life. After Marissa left, I sat alone for hours. The house felt different. Every photograph on the wall looked different. Every memory felt uncertain. When Vivian finally returned home later that afternoon, I couldn't pretend anymore. I asked her directly. At first she denied everything. Then she became angry. Then she became quiet. And eventually she cried. Sometimes people think the most painful moment is discovering betrayal. It isn't. The most painful moment is hearing confirmation. Because uncertainty disappears. And reality takes its place. Vivian admitted she had become emotionally attached to someone else. She insisted nothing physical had happened. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. At that point it almost didn't matter. Because trust had already been damaged. The weeks that followed were brutal. Counseling sessions. Long conversations. Sleepless nights. Family questions. Friends taking sides. For the first time in my adult life, I genuinely didn't know what my future looked like. Some mornings I woke up determined to save my marriage. Other mornings I wondered whether it should end. What surprised me most was Marissa. After telling me the truth, she stepped away completely. No constant phone calls. No attempts to influence me. No gossip. No interference. She simply respected the situation and disappeared from the center of it. That taught me something important. People who tell difficult truths usually pay a price for it. Months passed. Vivian and I worked harder than we ever had before. Not because everything magically healed. But because broken things require effort. Real effort. Painful effort. Honest effort. For the first time in years, we stopped pretending. We stopped performing the role of a happy married couple and started discussing the reasons we had drifted apart. I learned things about her loneliness. She learned things about mine. Neither of us liked what we discovered. Yet slowly, understanding began replacing blame. One evening nearly 6 months later, I received a message from Marissa. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. She simply wanted to know whether I was okay. That was all. And strangely enough, that simple message brought me back to the question she had asked at my door. Was I happy? I thought about it for a long time. The answer was complicated. I wasn't happy when she knocked on my door. I wasn't happy when the truth exploded into my life. I wasn't happy during months of confusion and pain. But for the first time, I was becoming honest. And honesty creates space for real happiness. Whether it comes immediately or years later. Over the next year, my marriage slowly transformed. Not into the perfect relationship people post online. Into something more realistic. More mature. More vulnerable. Vivian accepted responsibility for her choices. I accepted responsibility for the emotional distance I had allowed to grow between us. Neither of us could rewrite the past. But we could decide what happened next. One spring afternoon, nearly 18 months after that knock at my door, Vivian and I were sitting beside a lake during a weekend trip. The water reflected the afternoon sunlight while families walked nearby. For the first time in years, everything felt peaceful. Not perfect. Peaceful. Vivian looked at me and admitted something she had never said before. She admitted that losing my trust had terrified her more than losing the marriage itself. Because trust, once broken, isn't guaranteed to return. That moment stayed with me. Because rebuilding trust had taken hundreds of ordinary decisions. Small acts. Consistency. Patience. Time. The things people rarely celebrate because they aren't dramatic. Yet those small things saved us. A few weeks later, Marissa visited again. This time there was no hotel robe. No tension. No devastating secrets. Just coffee, laughter, and the kind of quiet relief that comes when difficult chapters finally end. As she prepared to leave, I thanked her. Not for exposing a painful truth. Not for changing our lives. I thanked her for caring enough to ask one question. A question nobody else had asked. A question that forced me to look honestly at my own life. Because sometimes the people who help us most aren't the ones who rescue us. They're the ones who make us face reality. And reality, no matter how painful, is where healing begins. Special request, before the ending, tell us in the comments, if someone asked you today, are you truly happy, what would your honest answer be? Years later, when I think back to that morning, I don't remember the shock first. I don't remember the fear. I don't even remember the betrayal. I remember a woman standing in a doorway with sadness in her eyes, carrying a truth she never wanted to deliver. I remember one simple question. And I remember how that question changed the course of multiple lives. Because sometimes life doesn't change with grand speeches. Sometimes it changes with a quiet knock. A difficult truth. And one question asked at exactly the right moment. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a comment below, and subscribe to Ancient Truth. Your support helps keep these meaningful stories alive and allows us to continue sharing messages of hope, forgiveness, and second chances. And remember, the truth may break your heart for a season. But sometimes it also becomes the first step toward healing it.